Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the blueprint for building a real estate empire. We're talking about going from that very first unit all the way to 1,000 doors. And we're going to follow a really clear roadmap that's laid out in our source material.
But let's kick things off with a question that probably hits pretty close to home. Are you waiting for that perfect time? Do you think you need $1 million in the bank just to get started? It's such a common mental roadblock. But as you're about to see, it might just be the wrong thing to be focused on. You see, the source material argues that the biggest thing holding you back isn't your bank account at all. It's your mindset. It's about this huge shift, right? Moving away from the church mouse who's always focused on what they don't have and becoming the future elite who's obsessed with the process and acts like a true producer. All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to nail down that billionaire mindset. Then, we'll see why your first tiny profit is so powerful. After that, we'll get into the value-add explosion and how to master the infinite return loop. And finally, we'll see how you pull it all together to build your own asset empire. So let's jump right into section 1, the billionaire mindset shift. This is all about totally rewiring your brain, moving your thought engine, as they say, into a completely new way of thinking. What that means is getting out of the mindset where you're just trading your time for money, like an employee or even a small business owner, and planting yourself firmly in the investor quadrant. In this zone, your entire focus is on one thing: acquiring assets. It's about making your money work for you, not the other way around. Okay, so how does this mindset actually work in the real world? Well, that brings us to point number 2. Getting your very first, even tiny profit. We're going to look at a story of a super small deal that had a massive psychological impact. Even the biggest names in this game started small. Robert Kiyosaki's journey didn't start with some giant skyscraper. Nope, it started with a single one-bedroom condo on Maui that cost just $18,000. And here's the kicker: he didn't use a single dime of his own savings. So the strategy was simple, but absolutely brilliant. He found the condo, right? But for that 10% down payment, he didn't touch his bank account. He just put it on a credit card. Now think about that. That one move meant he had zero of his own cash tied up in the deal. So financially, there was almost no risk. But mentally, he had everything to gain.
So what about the big payday from this first deal? Well, it wasn't exactly life-changing money. After paying all the bills, that little property only put $25 a month into his pocket. Just $25. But that $25, that was monumental. It was the proof of concept. As the source says, it proved he never had to say, "I can't afford it" ever again. It completely rewired his brain to see that affordability isn't about how much money you have in savings. It's about finding a deal that actually works. Okay, so you've got that first win under your belt. How do you scale from there? Well, that takes us to section 3, the value-add explosion. And the secret here is learning to speak the language of professional investors. The most important phrase you need to know: net operating income. Net operating income, or NOI for short, is everything. It's all the money your property brings in minus all the costs to run it. And here's the crucial thing to understand. In the world of commercial real estate, when you increase the NOI, the total value of the property doesn't just bump up a little bit, it explodes. Let's look at another great example from the source, Ken McElroy. This guy built a portfolio of over 10,000 units by mastering this one simple concept. He wasn't just collecting rent, he was actively hunting for ways to boost that income. And here is a fantastic example. He bought a building where all the tenants had to drag their laundry down the street to a laundromat. He saw a huge opportunity. He invested about $650 per apartment to install in-unit washing machines. And that simple upgrade allowed him to raise the rent by $75 to $100 a month, a convenience tenants were more than happy to pay for. And check out the impact. That small increase in rent each month, multiplied across hundreds of apartments, just massively increased the building's NOI. So what did that do to the property's value? It shot up from $19 million to $25 million. That is a $6 million increase in value, all created by adding some washing machines. Incredible. This leads us right into our 4th section, the infinite return loop. And here's the real mind bender. You don't actually need your own cash to create that $6 million in value. You just have to know how to use other people's money. I mean, let's be real, you're going to run out of your own money eventually. It's finite. But the world is absolutely flooded with capital from banks, funds, and private investors who are all desperately looking for pros who know how to put that money to work.
Your job is to be that professional. And the main tool you use to tap into this is the cash out refinance. It's simple. Once you've increased the property's value, you go back to the bank. They look at it, see it's worth way more now, so they give you a new, bigger loan. And that difference? It gets paid out to you in cash. And this creates what the source material calls the Surfinito loop. It's a path to infinite returns. You crank up the NOI, which forces the value of the property way up. Then you refinance at that new, higher value. You take that cash and, get this, you pay back your investors 100% of their money. And that money comes back to them tax-free because it's technically debt. So you're left owning a cash-flowing asset with none of your money or your investors' money left in the deal. It's a beautiful thing. And that brings us to our final section, building your asset empire. Because here's the truth. Scaling up to 1,000 doors isn't a solo mission. It is absolutely a team sport. You simply cannot be a solopreneur at this level. You need a fortress of professionals around you. You need brokers finding you the deals. You need property managers handling the day-to-day headaches. You need attorneys structuring everything to protect you. And you need CPAs who really, truly understand the language of money. So, the source material wraps up with a direct challenge. It's not just about learning this stuff, it's about doing it. It suggests the 100 deals in 90 days process. That just means getting out there, talking to people, and looking at deal after deal until analyzing them becomes second nature, and your brain starts to see that hidden value that everyone else misses. So let's end on this question. The path from one door to 1,000 really isn't about having $1 million. It's a process. And it all starts with that big mindset shift. It all starts by changing the question you ask yourself. If you stop focusing on what you can't afford, what kind of value will your brain finally be free to see and, more importantly, to create?